All right, so to round out this discussion about win totals, let's close with the most important one, USC. USC is at 7.5. And we just talked about Washington being at 7.5, and Washington being mysterious, including at the quarterback position. So as I just said, Miller Moss at USC, like that is a mystery as well. And there are also, of course, natural questions about the defense. How's it all going to look? How's it all going to come together? Can Danton Lynn do for the Trojans what he did for the UCLA Bruins last year? And I want to highlight Gary from Dana Point. And Gary has been active in the chat tonight. And Gary asked me, I think it was a week ago, might have been a week and a half ago. He asked me, with USC not getting these defensive tackles in the transfer portal, and that's also been a big point of discussion in the chat tonight here at the Voice of College Football. Is USC going to have to win shootouts? Gary wondered about that. And for anyone who didn't hear my answer the last time I answered Gary from Dana Point's question, it's worth discussing that again, because there's been no fresh movement. There's been no big splash from USC in the transfer portal this past week, at least in terms of getting defensive tackles. So to reiterate, if you missed my answer, I'll give it again now. That I think that the way forward for USC, assuming it can't get that difference-making defensive tackle in the portal, it's not going to be so much having to score 35 or 40. It's going to be how much can we control the ball each game. I think that's going to be the pivot point for Lincoln Riley, is that you don't want the defense, because it's thin, because it doesn't have enough depth, you just can't keep that defense on the field very long. Now, if USC can play games in which it's regularly getting 35, 36, 37 minutes time of possession, the defense, if it's asked to play just 23 to 25 minutes per game, probably could be pretty good, and will be less subject to attrition and all the negative forces that could really imperil this USC season. If the offense can control the ball mid to upper 30s in terms of minutes per game, then I can still see this season really working out well. But if the Trojans can't control the ball, they can't at least get to like 33, 34 minutes. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to ask the defense to play a lot of snaps every week. That's how it's going to get ground down. And so USC needs to not only have a more conservative mix, play selection mix, but also run the play clock inside 10 seconds, if not 5, on any live clock plays, and start in the first quarter. Like it's not just wait until you have a 14-point lead in the third quarter. We'd love to be in that situation, but don't wait. Do it in the first quarter. Like this is a game-long project to hit 35, 36 minutes time of possession. So that's where I think USC, if there is an adjustment to not having the level of defensive depth that this coaching staff expected, that's the pivot point. It's not try and score 40. That's something you try to do with Caleb Williams, number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Miller Moss, it isn't the same, and it shouldn't be the same. This should be much more ball control, grind the clock, maximize milking the play clock as well. Let's get into 8-minute drives. Let's get 7-minute drives, 13 plays, 75, 80 yards. That I think is going to be the main adjustment. And does Lincoln Riley, this mad scientist, in many ways the spiritual successor to Steve Spurrier in terms of like just a chalkboard genius who loves drawing up those ball plays in the dirt, can Lincoln Riley find ways to kind of restrain himself? Pick your spot once in a while when you need 7 points in crunch time. Fine. That's when you go use the gadget play like the one he used with Zachariah Branch against Washington to get a touchdown. Can he be very, very selective in terms of those kinds of instances, but for the most part, use a very short, horizontal kind of offense, and to use Hank Stram's phrase, matriculate the ball down the field? Can Lincoln Riley become Hank Stram 1969, 1970 at this USC season. It's gonna be fascinating to see if Lincoln Riley. He doesn't need to have that dog in him. He needs to have that surgeon in him to make these very tiny incisions instead of bringing out the big knife and just carving up the patient. No, it's going to be about those very little incisions. Like this is going to be planting a microchip in a very specific part of the anatomy. Which one? I don't know. That's a side note. But it just, can Lincoln Riley make these tiny little granular play calls that enable USC to win, not with the huge home run, but death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like that's not how Lincoln Riley has historically operated. It might be the way he has to operate in 2024.
The next time our buddy Tim Prangley heads out to practice, we'll have to ask him to ask Lincoln Riley after practice whether they've got 38 toss power trap in the playbook.
Awesome. So NFL films, nectar of the gods, right there.
That's right. All right, folks. As we look at this schedule here, I'm going to ultimately maybe lose the USC contingent. I'm going to have them all over me after I make this statement, but I'm going to preface it with this. I don't think there's a game on the schedule that is a certain loss. So let's state that, because I tend to be a little bit more open-minded about the potential of wins and losses. So, for example, if we went through, and I see this all the time during the preseason where various people make their projections, not just that the record's going to be 9-3 or 10-2, but the specific wins and losses. And typically you project those to be the logical ones. However, if you review a college football season, I'd say, well, first of all, there are 2 or 3 upsets every week of double-digit magnitude. So they're not always the obvious ones. So let's keep that in mind. Also, that, again, I believe that USC can win every game on the schedule. Now, to the probabilities of winning every game, that's going to be a difficult task, of course, 12-0. But I'm talking about individually from week to week, they can beat anyone on the schedule. On the flip side, and therefore I am very much, Matt, I'm in your tier when it comes to being not super bullish on taking the over with USC, but I'm certainly leaning heavily that direction myself. But if we take these games and we look at how USC performed last year, let's say USC is generally the same football team, that even though the productivity of the offense is going to look much different on the field, let's say the actual results of the offense are similar and the results of the defense are similar. If these teams are similar to what they were last year, these first 6 games, they're losing against LSU, they're losing at Michigan, they're losing against Penn State, and they will have a tussle at home against Wisconsin. They're a 3-3 football team after 6 games. If they are no better than they were last year, and if these teams are comparable to what they were last year.
Can't argue with any of that, because yeah, I mean, USC was beating the likes of Arizona State and Colorado, and of course, that Arizona win turned out to be a lot better at the end of the season than any of us imagined at the time. But yeah, so like if you remember how poorly USC played in late September in Tempe against Arizona State, and then in Boulder on that big noon Saturday game against Colorado, and you replace Arizona State and Colorado with LSU and Penn State, yeah, what were wins in the first half of 2023 are going to be losses this year. My thought for you, Mark, and also for everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football, my thought about USC's schedule, obviously the trip to the Big House in Ann Arbor, it hasn't been officially announced as a big noon Saturday game, but like, come on, let's be honest. That's almost certain to be a big noon Saturday game. So it's going to get tons of major national attention. And of course, USC, Michigan playing as Big Ten competitors. It's going to be the first Big Ten game of the season for both teams. Michigan coming off the national championship. it's going to be a huge event, and obviously there's going to be just a ton of media attention. So naturally, rightly, appropriately, USC fans really, really want to win that game. Here's where old contrarian Matt enters the conversation. Like, I want to win that game, and it's a big game. Not going to get an argument from me there. But I'm not thinking of, oh, USC has to win that Michigan game. And in fact, if USC gets dressed down by Michigan in that game, it actually could be the best thing to happen to this team. Now, the game I really want to win is LSU, because I think if USC can bank a high quality win that's likely to look very good at the end of the season, that's going to give this team confidence. But then I think when you go to Michigan, USC is not going to be favored in that game, period. I can't see any set of circumstances or plot twists that would enable USC to enter that game as the favorite. Would you want to, lose that game in agonizing fashion, such that you walk out of that game thinking that, oh, you're a really good team and like everything's going fine? I actually think that getting the doors blown off by Michigan would be a splash of cold water that makes sure that no one in that locker room is complacent. No one in that locker room is overconfident heading into that Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State stretch. And so it's kind of a thing where, if you're gonna, Martin Luther said, if you're gonna sin boldly. Well, in my case, it's, if you're gonna lose, like, get all the bad football out of your system in one game, and then the rest of your season can feature solid, consistent football. And I'm not expecting people to agree with me. I'm not expecting people to like what I'm saying right now. But I actually think that because this Michigan game is coming early in the season, like, that's a particular point. If this was a late October, early November game, I wouldn't be processing that Michigan game the way I am now. But I think that, like, getting a smackdown by Michigan could be that moment of sobriety, which enables USC to remain focused, humble, appropriately, intent on being precise, on bringing the right mentality to every game. And so, like, let Michigan be a kind of dumping ground. Let Michigan be the one really bad game of the year, and then let the rest of the season reflect adjustments, coaching, hunger, discipline, everything that we're hoping for at USC. And I think that could be the path to a 10-2 record and the college football playoff. So my prediction right now for a USC record, 9-3. I think 9-3 is just about right for this team. I'm not willing to go to 10-2, and it's because USC hasn't landed the defensive tackles in the transfer portal that it really did need, especially after Isaiah Rakes left the program. I just don't think USC's defensive depth is quite at the 10-win level. But if there is a path to 10-2, I would say get it all out of your system in that Michigan game, which creates a better, more cohesive team dynamic, the requisite level of humility in that locker room to then go forward and take care of business against much more manageable Big Ten opponents.
When I'm projecting a record, I typically group games together. So I'm not going to just flat out say, okay, if they go 9-3, they're going to lose to LSU, Michigan, and Penn State, let's say. Now, I can do that, and maybe I will do that later in the summer. But as it stands right now, I look at it this way. Most likely, they split LSU and Michigan. And most likely, they split Wisconsin and Penn State. I know both of those games are at home. And then they have the Notre Dame game at the Coliseum late in the season. So I'm leaning gun to head. My call is 9-3. However, again, we tend to look at all the big boys, but don't discount a trip to Maryland in October. I wouldn't look past that game at all.
Just ask Kevin Riley and those California Golden Bears.
I'm not familiar with that.
for those Pac-10 historians in the crowd, yeah, under Jeff Tedford, Cal played a noon game, 9 a.m., a body clock game.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about Stanford Northwestern in 2015.
Sure.
Stanford didn't handle the body clock game. Well, Cal didn't handle a body clock trip to College Park under Tedford.
Okay, I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
Do not recall that one back when Maryland was in the ACC. Yep.
Yes. So I think Michigan and Notre Dame are the likely losses on the schedule, and then I'm not sure about the third loss, but I just think that at some point either attrition or Miller Moss not being at his best, USC is going to trip up in one other game. But Michigan and Notre Dame are the two games I think USC is going to lose. So I do think USC is going to beat Penn State, and I do think USC is going to beat LSU. It is worth bringing up just on the subject of the USC LSU game. LSU and USC are in the same boat in a lot of ways. I wrote about this at Trojans Wire a week ago, but let's just talk about that now that we're on the subject. Their secondaries were horrible last year. Their defensive coordinators were horrible last year. Both coaches have dramatically retooled their defensive staffs in the offseason. They have both swung and missed at transfer portal prospects along the defensive line. They both have mysterious quarterback situations this year after having a Heisman Trophy winner leave the program and become a a top two NFL draft pick. Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2. So these programs have a lot in common as we head into 2024. It was really fascinating. Oh wait, that's similar. Oh, and that's similar. Oh, and that's the same. Oh, and that is these programs are inhabiting eerily similar situations, and therefore, Mark, I've been looking at. I don't spend time looking at polls, but the people I work with, the other College Wire sites, people who are always conversing and trading information. We're always looking for story ideas and content in these off-season months. Well, the other College Wire editors that I work with, they pointed out these composite top 25 post-spring rankings from CBS, ESPN, The Athletic, other outlets. LSU is close to the top 10 in multiple post-spring top 25s, and USC is not in a top 25. I don't get that. If LSU and USC are in such similar situations, and they are, empirically, they are in very similar situations. Why is it that LSU's pretty much in the top 15 and USC's outside the top 25? And that's a fascinating thing. And I know people in the comments are going to go, Matt, it's 3 letters, or maybe perhaps 4. The 3 letters we know, and the other 4 are ESPN. That might have something to do with it, but these are different media outlets. It's not just ESPN. It's also CBS. It's also The Athletic. Also USA Today Sports as well. It is a bit of a puzzler that LSU, just in terms of ranking, and I know this doesn't mean that LSU is going to win the game, but it's just fascinating that two teams can be in such similar situations, and yet there's a significant gap in national perception based on the post-spring football offseason rankings.
And pretty similar talent. And they both have starting quarterbacks now who are much different than their predecessors. And they have 2 starting quarterbacks in LSU with Garrett Nussmeier and, of course, Miller Moss, who had auditions in postseason play and performed extremely well. And I have pretty strong confidence that they're both going to be very capable quarterbacks, close to the top of the line. Not all Americans, not Heisman Trophy candidates necessarily, but very good, productive quarterbacks for each respective team. And they're very similar in talent level as well in regards to the entire rosters and the starting lineups on both sides with USC and LSU. This could also be an answer to your observation concerning the rankings, Matt, is that I find that a lot of these people, and these writers in particular, they make a projection when they make a ranking. That's not how I do it. When
Yeah.
I release a top 25 at the beginning of the season, even before they play, now once they play, it's all based on the results, and the results are king. But before, if I'm asked to and I deliver a top 25, I do it based solely on how good I think the teams are. I believe number one is the best team in the country. Number two is the second best team in the country, and on down the line. I'm not looking at schedules trying to make a prediction to say, oh, this team's loaded. They're really good. But, oh, look at that murderer's schedule. They're going to go 9-3. And so they're the fourth best team in the country, but I'm going to drop them to 12. Or, look at this light schedule. This is a cakewalk. This team's really not that good, but man, they're going to make their way to 10-2 because I don't do it like that. I rank the teams where I believe they should be placed, and I allow the games then to unfold and tell us where they should be ranked based on the results.
That's why you're the best, and that's why the voice of college football is the authority on college football rankings. And it's also why I can't wait for the season to start, because then the off-season conjecture, which means nothing other than a warm bucket of spit, we can just dispense with that. But of course, it's May, so like we're talking rankings and we're talking projections, and that's just the way this industry goes. So like this is the time of year to talk about those kinds of things, and it's gonna be fascinating to see how quickly various off-season opinions do or don't hold up.